Hello there, my name is Lily. This is my channel, Lily Does Stuff. Oh, there's a fish. There we go. This is my channel, Lily Does Stuff, and today the stuff I'm doing is talking about the recently controversial figure, PirateSoftware. So I really want to begin this video by stating that I do not know PirateSoftware personally. In this video, I'm not going to make any claims outright about his character. I'm not going to state that he's a bad person or a narcissist or a great person or anything like that because I do not know the man. This video exists purely as an inquiry as to why some people, now that he's responded to criticism about him, still find him so incredibly unlikable. And I thought the best way to do this would be to look at Dr. K's interview with him, which I'll go into in about a second. But before I yammer on about that, I'd like to provide some context on how his platform was able to grow to the point where he was finally able to have a dramatic downfall. So for those who don't know who PirateSoftware is, allow me to introduce you to Jason Thor Hall, a streamer and YouTuber who has been putting out gaming and game dev related content for about a decade now, and whose channel blew up around 2023 thanks to his quick and entertaining YouTube shorts. For those who might be unaware, YouTube really pushes its shorts, so much so that I, someone with 18 subscribers at this very moment, am able to get like 1,000 views on a short that I put out, despite my regular videos getting like 10 to 40 views. So that should give you an idea about how effective shorts can be as a tool to grow your YouTube channel. They're super effective if you go the extra mile to keep people interested, and that is something that PirateSoftware is particularly skilled at. So if you watch any of his shorts, you'll notice some trends. The deep voice, the split screen video, interactions with his streaming audience, and most notably, in my opinion, an air of authority. PirateSoftware speaks with the kind of confidence you might expect from an astronaut, or a world-renowned heart surgeon, or Gary Vee.
The fuck do you need a wardrobe for when you have no money? Why do you have 16 fucking shirts?
But importantly, and unlike Gary Vee, Thor remains relatable to his audience. I'll insert some examples of what I'm talking about here.
Generally, when someone's trying to get in IT, I tell them that they need to get a IT help desk job before anything else, because it just gives them a good lay of the land and a good understanding of all the systems involved, and more importantly, user behavior. Because users are dumb as shit, and you don't realize how dumb they are until you have to serve them in a help desk position. It's a nightmare, and that's really helpful, as weird as that is. It's incredibly, incredibly beneficial to your career. Legitimately so. And users lie all the time. They do. Do you support kernel level anti-cheats? No. I hate the shit out of it. I'd rather go heuristic detection every day. That's why I run any game that has kernel level anti-cheat, I run it on a secondary machine and then pipe it into this one. Think about it this way, right? Let's say a cop comes to your door and he goes, hey, I don't know if anything bad is going on in there, but can I sit in your house for a little while? Would you say yes to that? Would you let a cop sit in your living room all day? That's why I don't like kernel level anti-cheat on my machine. Like, that's the reason, right? It doesn't matter if I'm doing anything wrong or right. I don't want a cop sitting on my machine all day. Go away. This is my machine. I'm the administrator. Get out. No, you cannot. Be gone. Have you heard of sleep, Mr. Thor? Yeah, so here's what I do instead of sleep. I go downstairs. I get a bunch of crackers. I get a bunch of spreadable cheese. I put the spreadable cheese on the crackers. It's really nice. It's like herbs. And then I put some salt on that, which is nice. And then I eat that. And then instantly I have enough energy to not give a shit anymore. And I come back here and I play World of Warcraft. That's it. Games are difficult because you need them to be fun. And fun is different for everybody. I'll give you an example. Who here has played Getting Over It? That really difficult rage bait game. Some people find that fun. You know what I found fun with that? Falling on purpose and then being very calm about it to chat for 6 hours straight. And saying, don't worry guys. It just gives us a chance to get back up there again. It's kind of like life. Chat got pissed. Deeply funny to me. Deeply funny to me. 6 hours of that, falling at the exact same spot every time.
In these short snippets of content, Thor toes the line between confident smart guy and relatable nerd. This kind of balance allows his audience to both relate to him and to feel better about themselves for it. If Thor is so brilliant, and I agree with Thor about this and this and this, and we play the same games, then I feel pretty damn good about myself and my opinions too. And this is not to say that all of his opinions are just wrong, but I do think that Thor's overconfident delivery combined with the deep voice, which some people speculate to be fake, but that's not the point of this video, make his content very appealing, especially to those who value having strong opinions about things and place a lot of emphasis on being right most of the time. So how did his reputation take such a dive? The most common thing that people point to is a situation in World of Warcraft, where members of Thor's party died and lost a ton of progress because of a run that just did not go well. Lots of videos have been made dissecting this run, and certainly other members of the party are also at fault for the run falling apart, but Thor played a pretty big role in their downfall. Essentially, Thor ran away from the chaos, so he wasn't there to back up the rest of the party when they needed help. Now, one of the party members did say to run, but to experienced WoW players, which Thor advertises himself as, that generally doesn't mean every man for himself, book it across the map, especially since they called Thor back into the fray and he simply refused to help.
I got shield wall. God damn it.
Run.
Just run. Can you target dummy?
I can target dummy, yeah. Should I do it?
Just kill the massive. Yeah, target dummy. Kill the massives.
No.
Aussie, are you fine? Any grenades,
I got
anything?
Last stand. You can just
Heal him.
Yeah, you just heal me. Just come back a little bit.
Monster's on me, sitting bear form.
Snuppy, just run.
I can help a lot. Yep.
Pirate, why are you walking, bro?
What are you talking about? Why am I walking?
This
Look at
is
my mana.
savageable. Come
Innervate
on,
you?
man.
Just kill the mastiffs.
Innervate.
Innervate the
Nova,
healer.
bro,
Kill the
come on.
mastiffs. We got
He
this.
heals.
In the sense of
War stomping.
Do you see my mana? What am I supposed to do for you?
Just kill the mastiffs. One shot. Okay, we
More
pulled
on
another
the way.
pass.
More on the
Run
way.
now.
Ice Nova.
The mastiffs can be ice nova.
I'm dead.
Now we're gonna wait.
Nasara.
This wasn't even where the problem started, though. It was after the dungeon, where Thor refused to admit he did anything wrong, that people began to take issue with his attitude. Frankly, he seemed like a dick about the whole situation. He refused to have a discussion with the other party members, cutting them off while they spoke and then insisting that he left the discussion because they weren't letting him talk.
What do you want, man?
Let me say it again.
He already said his piece.
Pirate.
Go on.
Oh,
Yeah,
dear
I
God.
want to speak to him because I didn't speak to him correctly. I said it again. We all did mistakes, bro. Like I didn't say, we are just blaming you. It's about the zero accountability is what makes us so mad.
There's no zero
You see the point?
accountability, dude. Everyone can do something better.
you-
But when you open up and you yell over another person
listen,
like you
can
were doing
I
earlier,
speak?
nah, I'm good.
You
See ya. I'm not doing that shit again with him. Nah, he did it the first time. I'm not doing it a second one. Not interested.
Since Dr. K's conversation with Thor came out, again, I'll get into that in a bit, people have also started pointing to another time when Thor was being needlessly mean to a player who was new at the game, joking that Thor was the only mage there when the new player was playing mage alongside him and asking for help.
You basically have to evocate to get your mana back for the next pull. Ugh.
Remind me, sorry, I don't play the game, so I forgot. If you remind me, I can help you out. Real talk.
Yeah, it's too bad I'm the only mage in the party. You're right, Jen. If only someone else would cast Arcane. If only.
Can't really keep wishing for things that just aren't here, though.
That is true.
That's true. That's true. Can't wish for the rogue. Can't wish for another mage to cast Arcane in.
Yeah.
Brother, may I have some oats? Oh, since we have two mages, we could probably poly the ads.
Wait, we have two mages. Oh, man.
Yeah, I can poly.
Here I've been the only one casting Arcane in. Incredible.
Oh, that's crazy.
It's wild, right?
This is where we see the unabashed confidence that previously drew people to Thor's content work against him. Now it comes off as abrasive, hurtful even, and deeply insecure. The shield he had built himself using strong language, black and white thinking, and MS Paint had begun to work against him. At this point, he simply could not understand the real reasons people were upset with him, or he just chose to ignore and dismiss these critiques of his behavior. So you can imagine the internet's surprise when Thor agreed to hop on a video call with Dr. K. For the unaware, Dr. K is a psychiatrist and a streamer whose content focuses heavily on mental health, gaming, and gaming addictions. He has a channel called Healthy Gamer GG and has released a book titled How to Raise a Healthy Gamer. Oftentimes he'll have streamers join him for public interviews to talk about their mental health. It's important to highlight that Dr. K does not refer to these interviews as therapy for legal reasons and has even received a formal reprimand from the Massachusetts Board of Registration in Medicine, which came after a series of streams with content creator Reckful, who later died by suicide. Now, I am not implying that Dr. K had any impact on Reckful's decision to take his own life, and it seems that the board was not making this implication either. I just bring it up because I think it's necessary for us as viewers to be fully informed about these kinds of things before we engage in this content. Dr. K has publicly acknowledged this reprimand on his website. thehealthygamer.gg, so if you're looking for any details about that, they're all listed there. Back to Thor. So, a couple of months ago, Dr. K invited Thor to do a public interview with him to talk about the whole situation, which notably Dr. K knew very little about. This was where things got particularly interesting, because we got to hear Thor describe the entire situation from his perspective to someone who was essentially a complete stranger to him. I'll play that clip now.
Back in January. And I was part of this thing called OnlyFangs, and you kind of meme around, you make characters, but it's hardcore, so if your character dies, you lose it forever. But it's a character in a video game, right? So we're doing this dungeon, and the call was made to run, but it's kind of before that is we did the dungeon before that in a group, and we failed. And it was like, oh shit, everybody's running, everyone's freaking out, and we all made it out alive on that one. So we decided to go back in. Probably shouldn't have done that. When you have a group that falls apart like that, you probably shouldn't do it again. But we went back in, and on this one, a poll was made that was way too big. We weren't ready for it, and then all of us fucked up. Like every single one of us did, including me. And I talked about it online for it. But there was a pinnacle moment where one of the guys said, run, run, run. So we all ran, because you're letting a guy be a shot caller. And then as I ran, he goes, why are you running, to me? And I'm like, I could be a dick right now and be like, you told us to run, right? I could just like reflect that, be like, what are you talking about? Like, you did that. And I was like, what do you want me to do for you? Right. And I said, what do you want me to do for you? Look at my mana. Because it was mostly out of mana, but I had resources that I could have done for it. And I tried to make like kind of a light of the situation. And I was mostly irritated. It was an irritation response, not like a real accurate response. And it turned into this massive meme. And there's people in chat getting banned for it right now even.
So a couple of things really jump out to me in this first clip. The first is the generally dismissive tone that Thor takes on, specifically when describing losing a character in hardcore WoW. Yes, at the end of the day, it is just a character in a video game, but it's also a lot of hours and a lot of effort gone in an instant. And that is why Thor was so intent on fleeing in the first place. He didn't want to lose his character. He didn't want to lose those hours of his life. And I thoroughly believe that if Thor had lost his character in that fight, this is not how he would be framing things. In fact, Thor's entire recollection of the account was so dismissive that Dr. K couldn't figure out what the actual issue was until he pressed further.
No, it sounds like what you did was, I'm still not quite sure. You made a snide comment and then ran away in a hardcore dungeon?
I made a snide comment as we were escaping the dungeon, and 2 people died in that runaway.
Okay.
And that was it.
Again, this is still not the full story. I also noticed that Thor ended a lot of his sentences with right. He admits later to being very anxious about having this conversation with Dr. K, which makes complete sense given the circumstances, and I do feel for him in that regard. I think this is a big part of why Thor keeps ending his sentences with right, which acts as almost as an affirmative, as a plea for Dr. K to agree with him when he says something. This is neither positive nor negative, I just think it's interesting.
And it turned into this massive meme. And there's people in chat getting banned for it right now even. So for over 100 days now, there's people that spam mana gem and you're out of resources and run away from your friends and all this kind of shit. And the thing that's crazy about that is, tying back into the ferret stuff, is when Ghost died, my YouTube got littered with comments saying Ghost died because she was out of mana.
Oh my God.
That's the shit that I'm getting every day now. Because these aren't people that give a shit about World of Warcraft. They're not people that give a shit about those characters. They're not people that care about any of this stuff. They just want to hate me, and they're doing everything they possibly can to do that in the most vicious and fucked up way I've ever seen. And it is thousands of people. It is not a small amount of people. It is thousands. And I get this shit every day. And then there's people that come in and they go, oh, it's so funny. I just said mana in his chat and I got banned. It's like, yeah. We've banned 50,000 people on Twitch alone for this shit. 50,000 accounts so far for that. And about 14,000 have gotten unbanned because they put an unban request because they're like, oh, I didn't realize it was that big of a deal. And it's like, dude, this is crazy. It's been going on for over 100 days now. I think it's like, yeah, so it's about over 100 now. But yeah, it's invested internet trolling. Yeah, I think it's the most invested that I've seen with this kind of stuff. It reminds me a lot of like Coney 2012, which is just like, they've absorbed into their personality that they need to kill me by whatever means, right? And when I say kill, I mean it. Like, I've gotten swatted over this. I've had weird phone calls to my phone where they're trying to like set me up to try to get me arrested and all kinds of shit. I've had death threats, thousands of death threats over this, which is just insane. It's weird, man. Like I've never seen this kind of vitriol over something that's just so not a big deal, and for such a long period of time too.
I have no doubt that he's gotten some terrible messages, the one about his foster ferret Ghost included, and knowing the internet, he's likely received some death threats. But I think it's disingenuous to act as though everybody wants him dead, nobody's on his side, and the hate is purely based in some lame gamer drama. It's important to note that he does not say this, it's just how it comes off to the audience, thanks to his choice of words and the narrative that he's building. Thor speaks as though he knows the objective truth about everyone messaging him, and completely assumes their intent. In his words, they're not people that care about any of this stuff, they just want to hate me. And that might in fact be how he views the situation. As this interview goes on, you'll notice this pattern. Thor speaking as though his opinion is complete fact, something which used to attract people to his channel, now working against him. I will say, the internet's reaction to all of this, in my opinion, has been wildly disproportionate. Thor has been swatted, people have gotten his phone number, all of the fun stuff that comes from being a disgraced YouTuber has played out as you might expect it. I don't even like the guy, and I can admit as much, but I digress. When pressed even further about the cause of all of this backlash, Thor struggles to admit where the real problem lies. Effectively, the man was allergic to saying, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake." Instead, he was combative. Thus, there exists on the internet quite a few clips of him being combative.
So what I'm curious about is the people who got mad at you at the beginning. I'm not talking about the death threat folks. The people who got mad at you at the beginning, what were they mad about?
They were mad that I was being smug. That was like the general initial catalyst for it. The problem was, what I ended up seeing is a whole bunch of content creators, because this is a content guild, they took a whole bunch of clips of me to make it look as exaggerated as possible and then turn that into content all over the internet. And they kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. Since there's so many content creators pushing it at the same time to try and get as many views as possible, it pushed this narrative and that spiraled it completely out of control.
Not only did he completely minimize the problem as him being smug, he also placed the blame on other content creators for compiling all the footage of him being a jerk. That footage wouldn't exist if he weren't acting that way. No amount of context changes that. It's also worth mentioning that he never really apologized for being smug. If that's truly what Thor thought the problem was, as he states, why not just apologize? Why would that not be his first reaction?
I enjoy talking to you. I like you. I respect you. I think that sometimes streamers make mistakes. And at the same time, I think that something about what you're describing feels like there's a chunk that's missing. So I
think it's because it's all disconnected, timeline-wise.
Okay.
I guess it's hard to describe each individual piece. So the event inside of that dungeon happened. Then afterwards, I got brought into a call with the person who called me out. I left the call because he was shouting over me, and I was like, I don't want to deal with this. I'm not going to have a fight with you. I don't want to deal with it.
Here we have another clear misrepresentation of what happened, with Thor insisting that he was calm and rational, and someone else was yelling over him. This is a trend I've noticed a lot in people who try to feign intellectualism. This idea that a calmer, more pointed voice must be the rational voice, the right voice, the voice of reason in the situation. In reality, Thor was calmly rage baiting his party members. If somebody talked like that to me, I would lose it, and that would not be me being stupid or irrational. That would be an expected reaction to being spoken down to.
And I left. So that kind of made that more, and then content creators started to make a big deal about it. I started to receive death threats in the game from other players, and I said on stream, I'm going to start reporting people for doing this shit. I'm going to go after them. That got clipped, sent out onto the internet, and then when people sent that out on the internet, they tried to say that I was going after other streamers, when in reality I was going after the people who were sending me death threats, and the only streamers that I reported were ones that had done things like said on stream, I'm going to go to PirateSoftware's community and harass him because I think it's good content. Saying that live on stream, which is like 2 or 3 people.
You'll also notice how quickly Thor rushes the timeline. Thor made a comment, left a call, and then suddenly content creators made a big deal out of it, and abruptly we're back at death threats. It all leads quickly back to the most important part to Thor, which is that he is being unfairly penalized.
How do you understand why people keep showing up? You're saying it's happening constantly, right? You're saying that...
Oh, it happens if I talk about it. It happens if I don't talk about it. This is every day. It's just more right now because we're talking about it.
Right. So I understand that it happens every day. It sounds like it's like awful. I don't think you deserve this. At the same time, I think that if we want to, we can try to understand it. Is that interesting to you?
Sure. I mean, I think I do understand it. I think it's
What do you
become,
understand?
I think it's become a popular thing. I think that's really what it is. It's become kind of like a signpost on the internet, like, hey, stop by and do this thing because it's funny. And I get that. Like, I understand that. You know, it's because for a lot of these people, they've never engaged with their community before. They don't know who I am. They're not really interested in who I am. They just want to pop in and say a thing and then get banned. And that's it. Right. And some of them are chat hoppers from other communities, from creators that don't like me from that event and have created negative content about me. So they're doing that, and they come over from that community, and they think that that's part of it, you know?
Here, Thor speaks with confidence as to why he believes he's being harassed on stream. He thinks that these commenters find it trendy or funny to be banned from his stream, and I agree that they may find it funny. But I think it's born from a genuine dislike of how he has handled all of this controversy. The thing is, Thor will not admit that, and it's likely he doesn't even believe this is the case. Based on his comments, we can tell that he really may think this is a senseless hate brigade brought on by one smug comment that he made.
At this point, like, the route of trying to ignore it, the route of trying to talk about it, the route of trying to reason about it, we've done pretty much everything that I can think of at this point over like 100 days.
We've done pretty much everything, he says, knowing that he has not apologized. At this point, Thor has released a Twitter statement saying that everyone in the party has done something wrong, including himself, but that was too little too late. In fact, it was one sad line in a giant script that chastised content creators and mentioned once again how upset he was at receiving death threats. Really, all the people wanted was some kind of, I'm sorry for running out of the dungeon early, I shouldn't have, it was selfish of me. I'd also like to apologize for being rude and unkind to the other party members when that was completely unnecessary. Blah blah blah, please don't send me death threats, Thor. Obviously, he would still get hate either way. But I do believe that that would have done wonders for his career in that moment. Instead, Thor doubled down. I think another fascinating thing about Thor is that one of his greatest fears seems to be being misrepresented or misunderstood. It also seems that he places a lot of value in being reasonable. During this conversation with Dr. K, he talks about how disgusted he is with people punishing him unreasonably. That makes sense. But you might also notice the way that he frames all of his actions as reasonable. Just keep that in mind moving forward.
So let me just understand this. So like people who, your method of conflict resolution sounds super reasonable, right? It's like, if you've got proof, then you push forward. If you don't have proof, you kind of let things go. And then when I ask you, how does that work? And you're like, well, if people are mature, it works great. But if it doesn't work for them, they're immature.
I wouldn't say they're immature.
I know you wouldn't say that. I'm using that word. You use the word young. But I think the implication of that is that there's like a value judgment on people who that works for and a value judgment on people who that doesn't work for.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no, I absolutely do a value judgment. Like when somebody comes in and goes, you're this, this, and this. And I go, no, I'm not. And they're like, and then they just spew a bunch of vitriol. I just ban them, right? Like that value judgment at that point is like, okay, this is a person that is not able to have a normal conversation. They don't want to have a normal conversation. They just want to spew some like garbage. They don't care what's true. They just want to fight about it. And then I don't want them here, right? And that's where I do that kind of evaluation of like, are you cool enough to, like, are cool-headed enough to have a conversation, or do you just want to shout what you saw on Reddit?
So here once again, Thor shows his affinity for the calmer voice in an argument and frames his upset detractors as people who just want to fight and don't care at all about what's actually right or correct in this instance. I'm not saying that those people don't exist, but ironically, when you interact with someone who cares enough to be that upset about something like this, chances are they're reaching out and saying all of that because they have their own idea of what's right, and you've done something that they view as wrong. In my experience, people don't just yell because they have an appetite for conflict. There's typically something beneath that they're begging the other person to hear. They will never get that from Thor because he will just ban them, which is totally fine. If a stranger was screaming at me over DMs, I would block them too. But from what Thor has shown us so far, we can't really trust his account of what's happening. He described the one call with a party member as him being shouted over, when that was simply not true. He claimed that he was being attacked for being smug and for making one snide comment, when the real issue was a complete lack of accountability on his end. But to Thor, his account is the correct account. And him speaking calmly and framing everybody else as angry psychopathic trolls gives him credence and, most importantly, authority.
Let's forget about the
'Cause it was
trolls for a
smug.
second. Huh?
You know, 100%. It's because it was smug, right?
What does
Like,
that mean?
It means that in this situation, in that moment, it appeared that I didn't feel remorse. And people thought that I didn't apologize. They thought that I didn't care. They thought that I wanted those characters to die or some weird shit with that. But no one stopped to actually ask me. They just saw the clips out of context that made it look like I was a big villain.
People thought that I didn't apologize. They thought that I didn't care. They thought that I wanted those characters to die or some weird shit. So here, Thor is framing the audience members as incorrect in their assumptions, while ironically assuming their thoughts for them. Now, he is correct that other people thought he didn't apologize, because he didn't. We all make mistakes, including myself, is not an apology, and it only addresses the fact that Thor ran out of the dungeon. It does not address people's main criticisms of Thor, which are that he simply does not take accountability. He further dismisses the claims of people saying he didn't apologize by grouping them with those people who said he wanted his party members to die the whole time, therefore framing the entire audience once again as irrational and unreasonable.
They
Okay.
just wanted to continue the drama.
So,
right?
Thor, when I point this stuff out, do you notice anything with all the stuff that I've written out? Like, does anything kind of pop to you or not so much?
Trying to deflect from like personal ownership over something, but I don't think I'm doing that, so
I don't think I have to say anything here. The irony speaks for itself.
Just the way that I hear you speak, I notice certain blind spots or narratives that are constructed. So the first thing
because
that
I'm nervous about talking about it, to be clear. Like, it's a defense mechanism entirely because of the fact that this has been going on for so long. It involves all of my staff. It involves my family. It involves my general well-being. It involves my physical security at events. It involves all that stuff. And it makes me nervous to talk about it. So it's hard to articulate in a time like that without, I don't know. It's just hard to articulate, if that makes sense.
Okay. So that begs two questions. One important one, which is, are you sure that we should be talking about it?
Well, I mean, it's already too late.
No, it's not.
I'd rather talk about it.
No,
the
it's
way
not
that I
too
feel
late.
about it,
We
dude,
can
is
stop.
I would-
We can stop right this second.
So here, Thor mentions how nervous he is about his own well-being and essentially admits to not crafting a narrative, but to having trouble articulating the issue. Now, it's entirely possible that Thor is avoiding admitting wrongdoing out of fear that he will be punished like he claims. But again, the irony is that he's being punished right now for not admitting wrongdoing. It's almost tragic how easy it could have been for him to turn this whole situation around, and yet still he has not apologized. Everyone has been mean in their lifetime, so for all of the controversies to have, acting like kind of an asshole when you played WoW is so low on the list of egregious crimes to commit online. It's a shame that it seems so hard for Thor to just apologize without completely deflecting. Now Dr. K offers to stop talking about this if it's going to activate Thor's defense mechanisms and potentially harm him or his family like he claims, but Thor insists on talking about it to help other people.
I find that if you don't talk about this, it's not going to help other people, right? Like, I get it. I'm going through it right now. But this is something I think needs to be talked about because the amount of hate and abuse that's going on from this isn't just going to happen to me.
Okay.
I know that's going to happen to somebody.
I agree. I think that you are pretty unlucky
rather
here. I think you are the unlucky person who has tapped into something very fundamental in human psychology that has like triggered the shit out of people.
Notice how Dr. K speaks to Thor in this moment. His exact quote is, "I think you are the unlucky person who has tapped into something very fundamental in human psychology that has triggered the shit out of people." Upon first hearing this, it sounds a little saccharine, a little too flattering to Thor. until you realize that Dr. K is saying Thor has done something to piss people off. He just surrounded it with affirming language that fits Thor's "I'm the real victim" narrative. He says that Thor is unlucky, which implies a certain lack of responsibility for the situation that Thor is in. This is exactly what someone in Thor's position would want to hear. He then appeals to Thor's intelligence, which is clearly something very important to Thor, by saying that he's tapped into something fundamental in human psychology. The thing that Thor has tapped into is a general human disdain for people who are unwilling to admit wrongdoing. In this situation, that is Thor.
What I hear is, and this is what's so tricky about it, is like, I think everything you've said is logical because you kind of base things on sort of proof, right? But I'm noticing that, like, the way that you accept responsibility is like 1% of what your narrative is. So you say that you were smug.
Yeah.
Right?
I was super smug about it.
And
yeah.
I think that feels like a tiny, tiny, tiny part of your narrative.
At this point, Dr. K has realized people are desperate for Thor to take accountability. He's also correctly slipped in his suspicion that there are a dozen other things like what happened with the OnlyFangs Guild. For example, the Stop Killing Games drama. I'm going to take a detour here for context. Thor effectively refused to back what is seen by many, including many other significant streamers, as a completely valid and important movement for gamers everywhere. The Stop Killing Games movement, according to their website, is a consumer movement started to challenge the legality of publishers destroying video games they have sold to customers. An increasing number of video games are sold effectively as goods with no stated expiration date, but designed to be completely unplayable as soon as support from the publisher ends. This practice is a form of planned obsolescence and is not only detrimental to customers, but makes preservation effectively impossible. Thor egregiously misunderstood what this movement really stood for and what the founders' intentions were, and was hostile towards the very idea of the movement. He verbally dressed it down on stream and said he was open to a conversation with the founder, and then later denied that conversation completely.
Stop Killing Games comes from the guy, live service is a scam. This is not based on vagueness. It is their intention to have all games to be updated to be single player, even if it was an MMO originally. Do you have a source for that information for me? Because I'm going to be real with you. If that's the case, all of this can eat shit then. I drop the mask entirely. I have no qualms about that. If the intention is to turn all live service games into single player games, they can eat my entire ass. I feel like you've said this like 5 times. This is going to be the hot news for the day, dude. It's just going to keep coming up. Keep coming up. The reason that I'm talking about it so much is Sunder, our pants editor, our tailor, is sitting there taking all of this video and turning it into a video so we can put it up on YouTube, so I never have to talk about it again. It'll be great. Yeah. So we basically sacrifice one day of talking about this shit so that anytime anyone ever brings it up again, I go watch that video. Bye. What is this? What do you mean Europeans can save gaming? Gaming isn't in need of saving.
I've been working on a campaign to stop the destruction of video games. See, most video games work indefinitely, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
No, the entire live service game industry does not work that way.
But more and more are being designed to stop working the second support ends from the publisher.
Not just the publisher, the developers as well. It's called a live service game. When we turn the servers off, the game dies because it's all rendered completely on the server side, and we do that specifically for security reasons, because if it's all rendered client side, then you'd be able to cheat at the game dramatically easier.
If you want in-depth context about the entire Stop Killing Games situation and details on how Thor gravely misrepresented the movement, there are plenty of videos about that. Why I mention it is because it's yet another example of Thor's audience disagreeing with him, and Thor responding by shutting down, refusing to talk about it anymore, and refusing to admit that he could even be a little bit wrong. You might also notice when you watch those clips the aggressiveness with which Thor opposes it. The language he uses, the tone he uses, and the way he is willing to die on the hill that it's stupid, it's dangerous, it's illogical, and he, the great intellectual here, would never support anything so dumb. Now back to Dr. K.
But I think that something about this story has something that I would call the missing reasons.
Okay.
I'm not
think
saying...
for me, whatever it is, it's a blind spot.
Yeah.
Because, like, for me, I'm just like, this was me being smug. and it exploded out of control. And for me on this side, it just feels like a lot of content creators leaped onto it because it got popular to talk about. It became kind of like an it issue, and it generated a lot of views.
Listen to that phrasing. This was me being smug. A fair assertion. Correct even. And then it exploded out of control. It exploded. In his mind, Thor had nothing to do with the story running wild, running amok, going crazy in the content mill, when in fact his reaction to his guildmates was the problem. Yes, he was smug one time. Then he was mean. He refused to be held responsible for his own mistakes, and he lashed out at everybody else. This situation did not just magically get out of control. Thor actively chipped away at his career, which hinged on his likability, by being smug, being mean, and not apologizing for either.
And I think you're doing something that is like absolutely hitting a trigger point. And I suspect that what you're getting into, just with the way that you describe things, it's very much like I did this tiny thing, and then all of this stuff is happening to me that I don't have any influence over. And objectively, these people are wrong. Objectively, I'm correct. And when someone does that and says, I am objectively wrong, I'm objectively right and you are objectively wrong, this is not what happened, this is what really happened, and by the way, all this shit is happening to me now, it's like a very, does you kind of get what I'm saying? I'm trying very hard not to say certain words.
I don't see it that way, though. Like,
I know
see
you
it
don't.
As like an objective,
that
objective this, objective that. I see it as it's more of a deep emotional response from people that don't care about me or they don't care about resolving the situation. They want it to continue in some way.
Yeah, so
and
I
like,
think
I get it, but like I don't want to be a part of your story. Right? It's like.
So here we circle back to one of Thor's most glaring weaknesses, the difficulty empathizing with those who disagree with him. For years, Thor has touted his opinions online and received support from many of them. Based upon the way that he speaks and what he's saying, it comes across that Thor believes that his reality is the reality. It seems that he believes his opinions are the correct opinions. His assumptions about other people and their intentions are always correct. He is always rational, everyone else is irrational. This is probably his most frustrating trait to witness. It comes across as selfish and pretentious. Again, this worked in Thor's favor for years, back when his blind confidence about game development, climbing the ranks of the tech career ladder, and WoW plays were generally accepted and supported. Now that he's done something that some of his audience doesn't agree with, has completely committed to his own point of view, and is unwilling to hear any dissenting opinions, Thor comes off as rigid, stubborn, and unlikable, instead of how he appeared to his audience previously, which was knowledgeable and charismatic. This is the point where people begin accusing Thor of being a narcissist. Again, I'm not going to make those claims because I am completely unqualified to do so, but I understand why that accusation has come up.
I'm like, the best thing that you can do is wait till they move on, because the internet is an ugly mob, and this is the other thing that you're running into, which we haven't talked about. I do think that what you project is exceptional, and one of the things that the internet absolutely loves is to take an exceptional person and make them bad. So we love tearing down people who are good, and we love redemption arcs as human beings. Right? There's like, this person thought they were the best thing since sliced bread, and we're going to fucking tear them down. I've been on the receiving end of that a lot. And then the flip side of that...
I think that makes a lot of sense. And to be clear, I don't think of that about myself, like at all. Like I'm constantly going over anything that I can do right, anything that I can do wrong. I remember all of my own mistakes and beat the shit out of myself for them whenever I do that, just like I feel like a lot of people do.
I believe you do that for the stuff that you are aware of.
I do think Dr. K is being a bit dramatic with the use of the word exceptional, but that's not to say that Thor hasn't achieved anything in his lifetime. A lot of people clown on Thor because he's inflated his work experience to make it seem more involved in game development and hacking than it really was. He did work at Blizzard, a prominent game dev company, which he mentions a lot. It's also worth noting that much of his work was on the QA side of stuff, and he did not work there as a game dev. There is no shame in that. There also shouldn't be any shame in the fact that his dad worked for Blizzard and that likely had something to do with his hiring process.
People are calling me a Nepo baby. For those who don't understand the term, a Nepo baby is somebody who got their job only through nepotism, never accomplished anything in their career, and never did anything to deserve the position that they have. My father was the cinematic director for Blizzard for 23 years. He worked on basically everything going all the way back to the death and return of Superman and many other games, all the way up until now. And then he quit, he went off to Jagex, and he worked on old school RuneScape, I believe as a creative director of some kind. With that in mind, he now streams on Twitch under the name of Yearjoy. People think that I got my job at Blizzard specifically because of him. In reality, I only had help from him in order to do my resume. Aside from that, for the people who have this narrative, both myself and my brother applied at the same time. I got the job, and my brother didn't.
This is not to say that Thor was unqualified to do the job, but I think it's disingenuous to pretend that his father, being one of the OG employees at Blizzard, didn't have any impact whatsoever on their decision to hire him. But this is all beside the point. Thor worked regular jobs for years, and after a decade of content creation managed to build a massive audience. This is impressive. I really don't like the word exceptional, and maybe that's my own problem, but it is impressive. I do believe, though, that Thor does beat himself up, as he stated in that interview. In my opinion, it takes a certain amount of insecurity to try to gas yourself up online. I would know. I find that insecure people are more likely to deflect, like Thor, and to try to get others to believe that they are super great, super cool, super smart, super interesting, etc. So yes, I believe Thor here. I don't think a particularly secure person would name drop Blizzard this much.
I literally never talk about it. When I worked at Blizzard, I did that for Blizzard. Blizzard, 7 years, yeah. Blizzard. I used to work at Blizzard Entertainment. Used to work at Blizzard Entertainment. You're red team specialist for Blizzard Entertainment. And Blizzard. Is having worked at Blizzard. I grew up at Blizzard. Blizzard. Game industry for Blizzard Entertainment. Blizzard.
I have to give a disclaimer for this next clip. It is excruciatingly uncomfortable to watch. Enjoy.
So I think that
I don't think I'm better than other people. I do think that it's funny because you key on that. There's a lot of people that brought that up, and it's like I never said that I was, but you'll see there's a number of people that are in there that are getting like banned for this shit right now. It's like they come in and they're like, "Did you know that he worked at Blizzard for 7 years?" Like, yeah, that was my career, and I'm proud of that. So of course I'm going to talk about that because it gives context to talk about other things around the games industry, which is what we do on the stream.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes the things that I talk about in regards to those types of things is misconstrued as arrogance or boasting, when in reality, I'm just trying to give context.
So that is the problem right there. So I want you to listen to this phrase.
Sure.
This gets misconstrued as arrogance, but in reality, it's this.
Yeah.
That is the most arrogant statement on the planet, bro. Like, tell me I'm wrong.
Okay. I don't see it that way, but all right.
Right? So, oh, yeah. So you don't see it that way. You're wrong.
No.
Right? I'm right. So you're subjectively, you're thinking you have blind spots. You're wrong. Like, I'm objective and you're subjective.
No.
This is not the way it's perceived. This is really the way it is.
I think that turns into, I guess, conversational PvP for the sake of it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It absolutely turns into conversation. That's what you're doing.
So there, Thor just walked headfirst into the point and nearly got there. I'm an hour into this interview, and I almost want to cheer because this is the most self-aware that Thor has been the entire conversation. Once again, though, you have to notice how much pressure Thor puts on himself to be correct. It's exhausting to have to be right all the time, because eventually, like in this situation, you will end up being wrong about something. You cannot hold yourself to that ironically unreasonable standard. Here, Thor trying to hold fast to that standard is completely self-destructive. If he had just let go of needing to be right from the beginning, all of this could have been avoided.
So here's a subjective statement. I feel like this is unfair.
Okay.
Have you said that at any point?
Yes.
Over this
Maybe not
conversation?
today. I feel like I have said that because I was talking about the response is not proportional.
There we go. That's hold on. No. That's beautiful. That isn't the response is not proportional. That is not a statement of subjectivity. That is a statement of fact.
Okay.
Do you understand how I'm coding it?
I guess I could see that. I mean, like, that's me making an objective statement when I guess somebody else could say, no, it is proportional, you deserve this, sort of a thing. I guess the thing is I just don't agree with that stance, so I state it in the way that I do, right, with that. And I don't know if that's wrong, though, because I feel like there's a limit that seems sane. And by sane, I mean correct and, like, not...
Absolutely, man. There's absolutely a limit that seems sane.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be different for everybody.
No.
Whatever their version is.
No, it's not. Because you didn't say there's a limit, because you used the word sane. Sane is like an objective thing, right? Sane is like crazy, insane versus sane.
Here, Dr. K breaks down the way that Thor talks, specifically the rhetoric he uses, and how it makes him sound as though he's asserting himself as a completely objective person. I think what's also really fascinating about the way that Thor speaks is it's very pointed. It's a little harsh and very black and white. He uses words like sane, insane, wrong, correct, dumb, smart, etc. And we will see more of that as this interview goes on.
And I will use that as an objective term.
Yep.
I find it to be disingenuous to have a person come in that is not interested in a resolution, that just wants to cause a hateful situation.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's most of what I'm getting with this. And when they can't get me, it makes them angrier. When they can't hurt me, it makes them angrier. When they can't do anything about it, they can't shut down the stream, it makes them angrier. We get tons of people that'll come in and say things like, people still watch this guy. It's like, yeah, we still have a massive community. People love, hanging out here and doing stuff. So, like, I feel like when I make those objective statements, it's because I go, this is how I have this situation for communication. And if your only reason to be here is to cause problems, it's not going to be compatible.
Here, even this statement strikes me as arrogant. Thor explains that sometimes it is absolutely impossible to have a conversation with someone who has just hateful intentions and is not looking to have a discussion. This is absolutely true. The next part of his statement is where he starts to lose me. Supposedly, the trolls became irate and upset when they couldn't get to Thor because Thor is so reasonable and rational that they don't bother him and he just bans them. The irony here being that Thor's entire narrative up to this point relied on the idea that the trolls were really getting to him. It's just a bizarre statement to make.
Human brain is not capable of objective perception by definition.
I do think there is an objective reality, and I do think that's something that there is value in striving for in many situations, because something I don't like is perception is reality. And I know that perception is reality for the grand majority of situations. It has nothing to do with the objective reality of what is truth of the situation, what actually has occurred or anything like that. It's how do I feel about what occurred? Well, and that's something I've always felt. And that's kind of like a big thing for me. Yeah.
Great. I love it. I agree with you 100%. And I would love to talk about that with you maybe today, maybe on a different day, just about the philosophy side of it. But I think that my point is, so you're right. So, like, there's an objective reality. Agree. And perception is not objective reality. So when you look at objective reality and you conclude that this is what really happened, where are we? Is that objective reality or is that your perception?
That is my perception.
Very
100%.
good. Right?
When I talk about it, I think the disconnect is this. When I talk about something and I say it with, this is what happened, that's from my perspective. And I think maybe I'm not doing enough in terms of explaining this is from my perspective, this is how I feel about it, because I don't talk that way generally.
Yeah. That's not what you should be doing. So I think this is key point. This is exactly it. So I think this solution space seems hard for you to grasp. You shouldn't be further explaining yourself. You should be further trying to understand why people feel this way about you. Right? So this is not about what is objective. It is about what someone else's subjective perception of you is.
This is amazing. This is honestly a breakthrough for Thor in terms of getting people to understand him. He admits that his reality is not objective. but that the way he speaks makes it come off as though he does believe he is the only objective person. So we have here a nugget of self-awareness that I think people are glazing over when they talk about him because it's lost in a sea of arrogance. Hopefully he can hold on to that nugget and build off of it, though this interview happened 3 months ago and he's still doubling down, so maybe not. But like I mentioned earlier, I do believe that Thor hates being misrepresented. He's constantly trying to regain control of the narrative about him online, which is totally fair. He has also been correcting Dr. K's assumptions about how he may or may not feel about certain aspects of the drama as the conversation has gone on. So it's interesting to watch Dr. K bring up gently the idea that people's perceptions of Thor online may even have a little bit of a basis in reality. That people see him as arrogant because he comes off as arrogant, and it's not just a one-time thing.
Now, this is where things get really hard, because if people are sending you death threats, it becomes very difficult to get a reasonable perception of who you are from a heavily biased individual, right?
Yes.
So
yeah, no, it's impossible at that point, I find.
I get that. So not impossible, right? So this is where it's really interesting, but sometimes the people who hate you the most can still be very valuable information about how you exist in the world.
I agree with that.
Dr. K is again making a strong point here. We villainize people a lot online, especially influencers and celebrities, and people we assume should generally know better, do better, and have the means to, in our eyes, live happily forever, no matter what we do to them. What's also interesting is Thor's assertion that it is just impossible to weed out the bad actors sending you death threats from the concerned fans asking you to take accountability. This is yet another way of doubling down. Now the story is, if it were possible for him to see any flaws via how he is perceived online, he might have been able to look back and reflect on his behavior. To him, that is no longer possible because of the hate train coming after him. In reality, we know that Thor has a pattern of refusing to admit he's wrong, even when people express concern in reasonable ways, i.e. the Stop Killing Games drama. This is also another great example of Thor thinking in absolutes. This is either possible or impossible. And notice how quickly he jumps to the idea that it's impossible.
But my point is that I think the mistake you're making is that you say, I'm smug, and then you go on to all of these other issues, whereas I think you're really downplaying, whether consciously or unconsciously or whatever. Maybe it's even objectively correct. I don't know. All I know is that when you do that, people are not going to be happy with it. And when they respond to you, we're not talking about right or wrong here. We're talking about efficacy or not efficacy. Trying to understand where they're coming from with their complaints, as opposed to, so basically steel manning their argument instead of straw manning their argument.
Okay. No, I mean,
right?
I think the thing is that that's what I tried to do in the beginning, and I have not done that since.
I'd like to mention again, for someone who puts so much emphasis on being as objective as possible and finding what the objective truth is to a situation, Thor is completely detached from that truth, to the point where he's refusing to consider it at all. It's incredibly ironic that his need to be right, his need to find the truth, is what ends up blinding him to it. I also think that this is a way for him to distance himself from his emotions, because as we've seen, Thor doesn't like to portray himself as a particularly emotional person. In media, emotion is often portrayed as irrational. You're either logical or you're emotional. The two things cannot be true at the same time. This is obviously the opposite of how Thor wishes to be viewed, being emotional. I mean, I blame the Sherlock Holmes series, honestly. We see time and time again in media brilliant, emotionally detached minds, often men, and I do think that this impacts or is impacted by how we raise men and the way that we encourage them to be less emotional, more stoic, more rational. The problem then becomes that people who really dive into that persona, like Thor, have a hard time respecting emotion at all. This includes their own emotions. Living with yourself, an inherently emotional being, a human person, and hating yourself for being emotional is exhausting. Trust me, I get it. Again, the irony here is that Thor wants to be unemotional so he can be objective and correct. But without emotion, without the ability to empathize with other people and their opinions, you will never know the objective truth. If the objective truth is that you were mean to someone and they were hurt, but you refuse to acknowledge that emotion, that hurt, you will never realize that truth.
Okay. No, I mean,
Right.
I think the thing is that that's what I tried to do in the beginning. And I have not done that since. I think I stopped doing that about 30 days in. I tried to sit down and talk to people about it. I tried to ask people, like, hey, why are you saying that? And each time that I tried to do that, like I said, the callus kind of built up. It would end in just screaming the same thing over again until they get banned. And I haven't been able to get like a valid, real conversation out of it. I think the biggest thing is that I've only been able to receive really polarized responses. I either get people from our community, they're like, no, you're the best, you didn't do anything wrong, which is not true. Like, obviously, I screwed up in the dungeon, right? Like, that's obvious, and I was smug about it. Like, get it, right? And then there's the other side of it, which is, you're a piece of shit and you deserve to die. And I'm like, dude, these are so polarized. What am I supposed to get from this?
So this is a little saddening to hear. Maybe he's right at this point. All he has received have been polarized responses. But what's really upsetting is watching the chat and reading comments on people's videos, etc., that are just blatantly stating that they want him to take accountability and that's it. And it's entirely possible that this statement is just too vague for Thor to know what they're talking about, but it's definitely not true that nobody has tried to offer him a fair perspective. I mean, hell, that's what I'm trying to do right now, and I'm not even a fan of Thor's. People do care, and some even want the best for him, and it's sad that he's not able to see that.
So the solution that I am suggesting works with humans. I don't know if it works on the internet.
It's a very different thing, right?
No, absolutely, right? So in the real world, when someone gets mad at you, like, I want y'all to think about if people behaved in the real world the way they do on the internet, shit would be crazy.
I have a video on this, specifically on the psychology of how people act online and why they act that way, if you're interested.
Right, but my understanding of the situation is that you were kind of an ass about something involving a WoW raid, and then my guess is that you were kind of an ass with the way that you responded to it, because you're really good at being an ass, like in a way that I really appreciate, but you're an ass.
So I get frustrated watching this part because Thor knows he's been effectively an ass, but has never said, I'm sorry for being an ass. What is not clicking?
So, like, what I love, I've sent you a couple of DMs because, like, I'll see your shorts or whatever, and I'll be like, this is fucking amazing. That assholery that you exhibit, where you have these kind of base takes, is, like, what makes you amazing.
This is irritating to me because I personally dislike that kind of content, which is why normally I just wouldn't watch any of what Thor makes and leave it there. But I think when you build your brand around being an asshole on the internet, you open yourself up to other people being comfortable treating you like an asshole on the internet. He's admitting he's an asshole, and that's what attracted people like Dr. K to his content. But he can't understand that being an asshole is also what pisses people off about him. I also think that that kind of polarizing content attracts polarizing comments. When you say, I would never support this, it's ridiculous, it's dumb, this is my opinion, and I state it like it's fact, the end, you may not be surprised to learn that people will respond in kind. I'm not saying the hate is deserved here, but are we really shocked that people are bothered by somebody who acts like this online consistently? At the end of that clip, though, Dr. K brings up Thor's dismissiveness about the things he's said or done, and I do think that part of the reason people are so upset at Thor is because he's so outspoken about the things he thinks are wrong. He speaks in black and white terms. He speaks with harsh language towards stuff he personally disagrees with. But when it's his turn to be wrong, we see a kind of sympathy towards himself that he does not offer other people or other opinions.
Right?
So I feel like I'm being direct, and other people feel like I'm being evasive.
100%.
Okay.
So I want you to think about this for a second.
I've always had problems with that.
I
That
can
is 100%
tell.
a communication failure on me.
I can tell 100%.
See, that's the thing. I couldn't have this conversation with anyone else because it was just polarized and obnoxious every time I tried to have that conversation. And yeah, no, I get that.
So,
I've had issues with that my entire life because it's hard for me to be like, if I say something, I go, hey, here's the thing, and they go, oh, he's hiding something, and I'm like, but how else can I say this?
Yes.
And that's
I do believe that Thor has had these issues in the past, the same way that I believe he hasn't been able to have a conversation like this about it. I think the reasoning for that is not that everyone talking to him about it was irrational and polarized, but that they weren't offering his ego the kind of safety that Dr. K has been during this conversation. In this conversation, you can see how hard Dr. K is trying to keep Thor engaged and bring up why people may be upset with him while simultaneously doing his damnedest not to be accusatory. If the only productive conversation you've been able to have about yourself and your potential flaws has been with a very cautious psychologist, that's very likely not on everybody else for being polarized. That's a problem with you.
You say, hey, I was just smug. That's not how it felt to other people.
I think that was me dumbing it down
Yes.
to a flashpoint moment, not the full story.
Absolutely. So, and that's where you're screwing up, because you will dumb down your flaws to one word, but you will extrapolate and hypothesize other people's flaws to the nth degree.
And there it is, people. The answer. In Thor's face. What will he say, I wonder? How will he respond?
I don't think that is a fair assessment.
Damn.
Oh,
Okay.
much negativity there has been.
I rescind my statement.
Yeah.
So I accept that there is, okay, so here's how I would modify it. So I think you're right. I take that back and I apologize.
Yeah.
No,
It's okay.
and I think the perception from my end is still the same.
Okay.
Right? So we heard a long story from you. Even if it's congruent with reality, one word of what you did wrong, smug, and then 99 words of what other people did wrong. Even if it's correct, I'll agree that it's correct.
Incredible redirection from Dr. K here, since he could clearly tell that Thor was not accepting that perspective well and was putting his emotional walls back up.
So I see that this is like, it's like a difficulty with mentalizing is what we call it.
I don't know what mentalizing means.
Mentalizing is the ability to understand other people's thought processes and internal experience. Now, I know this seems confusing to you because you are really good at cognitive calculation of those things. But there's a big difference between understanding their internal experience and calculating their internal experience.
Dr. K is referring to the assumptions Thor has made about his audience and how Thor believes that they should feel based on how he perceives the situation and the way that he responded. One of the key aspects of mentalizing, which Dr. K was referring to, is realizing that other people have their own internal mental states, thoughts, feelings, opinions, whatever, that influence their actions. Essentially, Thor cannot understand that people who have their own reasons for attacking him often aren't just doing it out of pure vitriol. They have their reasons. Dr. K also mentions cognitive empathy versus emotional empathy. So it's not that Thor is completely incapable of empathizing. It's more that he tries to calculate in his head why someone is feeling a certain way. The problem lies in that he is only considering his own perspective on the situation. If Thor's perspective is that he was just a little smug and everyone dogpiled him because it was trendy and funny, then naturally the audience that is still upset with him must just hate him. There's no other reason in his brain why they should be upset with him. And this could possibly be Thor putting up walls and refusing to look into why they're upset with him, because that opens up the possibility of him being wrong.
No, because I think for other scenarios, I feel like I have done that.
Yep.
Of like, hey, I can understand, hey, this person is doing something illogical, but they're doing it because from their perspective, it makes the most sense. Like you explain the person who's like high on meth, right? And they're having a freak out and they're screaming stuff at you. What they're doing doesn't make sense for everyone else around, but from their perspective, maybe they feel like they're getting attacked. Maybe they feel like all this kind of stuff is going on, right? So I understand that side of that completely. But with this scenario, like I said, it was exhausting at this point. That's fallen away. The layers of I guess, giving a shit about empathizing with attack people that are coming in is just gone.
This makes sense to me. Thor likely doesn't want to apologize for his flaws because A, he may not even be privy to them, as we've seen so far, and B, he doesn't want to give in to the people who've sent him death threats, told him outright he's a terrible person, called his family, etc. I wouldn't want to empathize with those people either. The problem remains that many of his critics, and I would argue most of them, are not calling for him to die. They are asking him to take a reasonable action that would put him back in their good graces. It's not unfair to say that there are people who want to support him, but feel uncomfortable watching someone who was so stubborn and so cruel to other people. People want to relate to their favorite content creators, to be proud of them, and it's hard to be proud of someone who refuses to take accountability for their actions and just generally doesn't treat people with respect.
So the first thing is that the narcissistic defense mechanism is something that all human beings employ. In yoga, it is called the ahamkara, or the ego. So like we all, in order to function in life, it is very difficult for us to look at ourselves objectively. Now, what makes it harder to look at ourselves objectively is how much people attack us. So the more people attack us, the more our emotional and mental reaction is to defend. In the same way that if I was standing next to you and I tried to punch you, if I made a fist and I tried to punch you in your abs, your belly would harden. You can't even control it. You had to have no choice but to harden your abdominal muscles as I tried to punch you in the stomach. In the same way,
to have some, but yes.
In the same way, when we are attacked by someone, and this is true of all streamers because we get attacked a lot, our narcissistic defense must compensate. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. I'm not calling you a raging narcissist. Please, no one take that away. Okay?
Oh, they will.
I've left this part in because I do think it's important to hear, and I think it's a great point that Dr. K employs to force the audience to empathize with Thor here. Nobody likes being attacked. It sucks. We all want to feel good about ourselves, and in a way, Thor is trying to protect his ego, to walk away from the whole situation feeling okay about himself. Again, the irony is taking responsibility for his actions would be the best thing he could do for his ego. He could finally curb at least a little bit of the harassment. Instead, he shuts down.
Yes.
And when you engage,
and I found that the reactions started to get more and more. I could use the word unhinged, but it really just comes down to more and more unbending. Of I just want to make an attack. I just want to go in the chat and make an attack. I just want to go on your YouTube and make an attack. It wasn't in good faith to have like I want to have a conversation about this. It was I just want to be here to throw a punch and then leave. And
so I think that there's two things that I hear there. One is, once again, this pattern of the more I do something right, the more wrong someone appears to be. Right? So I tried to listen to them. They became more unhinged. They became more unbending. So that can absolutely be the case. But do you see how this is another scenario where you behaved correctly and someone else behaved incorrectly?
I feel like that is an incorrect response, because the first thing that'll be brought up is they always say, "Well, you didn't accept any blame." And I go, "Here's in this post where I said that
In Thor's mind, taking accountability means explaining himself. It means explaining why he ran out of the dungeon, why he was so irritated at his party members. Not once, though, does it include "I'm sorry." This is where the disconnect begins.
Like when you open yourself to conversation on the internet, let's be honest, the likelihood that you get a balanced person who really is willing to take a step back and admit their flaws and understand how they're wrong and is not projecting something on you is low.
That's not what the intention of me talking about it was when I was engaging in those conversations. The way that I feel about that a lot of the times, you're not going to get through to the person who's angry on the internet.
Okay.
You generally won't. They're not going to sit down and have a valid conversation with you. They're not interested in resolving that. Most of the time, that person doesn't care.
I really do understand Thor's frustration here. I do believe that he's interacted with a lot of angry people, a lot of trolls, a lot of people who really do just want to throw punches. That said, if he really wants to understand the outrage, he has to be willing to listen to people when they are trying to get through to him. Around 2 months after this conversation with Dr. K, someone did try to give him solid advice about taking responsibility for himself and his actions. This is how he responded.
Put up a video saying you were wrong with every situation and the internet move on. I am not doing that. I don't give a fuck. Yeah, simply bend the knee and lie about how you feel, and everyone will stop bullying you. That's a great idea, dude. Yeah, no, eat shit.
Not great.
So what I'm sort of getting is like, this is the disconnect. I do wonder whether you are blind to, there's a certain kind of accountability that people are looking from you that you're not giving them. That doesn't mean...
What is it?
This is what I'm digging into. So one is maybe it's in the way you're giving it. So it's not that I'm not saying you need to take more accountability, okay? I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. But my point is that when I see this pattern, and it could be just like, it's like a perceptual thing, because the way that you're talking is making people more upset, which doesn't mean that you're wrong. It's just like, the way that I'm communicating is ineffective at resolving this issue.
What's wild about this section of the video is that not only does Dr. K almost completely give Thor the answer, which is to apologize, but he also has to reaffirm his positive stance with Thor to ensure that he remains engaged in the conversation. He explains that he's not asking Thor to take more accountability. He asserts that perhaps Thor isn't even wrong about his account of everything, something that Dr. K has been repeating this whole time. Clearly, he can tell that being correct is a big thing to Thor. Notice also that he says, the way that I'm communicating is ineffective at resolving this issue. Not only is Dr. K referring to himself to avoid putting Thor back on the defense, but he's also blaming Thor's method of communication, not Thor himself. It's beyond interesting to watch him try to keep Thor in a state of conversational progress. I believe if he hadn't done little things like this throughout the conversation, Thor could have come out of this being way more defensive and looking a whole lot worse.
So, a simple thing, and I'm not saying that you should do this, but I'm curious about this, is I've noticed that you tend to be incomplete. I've noticed that you tend to be complete with your answers. So when I look at that X thread, right, you try really hard and you do a great job. You're like, here's what happened, here's what happened, here's what happened, here's what happened, here's what happened. Have you ever tried to be incomplete with the smugness? Just talk about the smugness.
If I try to be incomplete with it?
Incomplete with the whole story and just focus on the smugness.
What does that mean?
Let me
like not give any context whatsoever?
Yeah. Let's say yes to that. I think that's a bit of a hyperbole, but
just an emotional response?
This is the kind of attitude that pisses people off about Thor. He is instantly offended by the prospect of just referring to his own mistakes. Dr. K does a great job at ignoring the sheer disdain in his voice when Thor questions this tactic. Also notice the disgust with which Thor says, "So just an emotional response?" The man clearly feels a certain way about emotion and emotional reactions, the irony being that his very response to Dr. K's question is in fact emotional. He's upset by the very idea of it. I feel like I have to mention here that an emotional response is not always an incorrect response. Things will happen to you, and you will do things to trigger other people's emotions. It's how humans are programmed. It's unfair to both yourself and others to look down on the very concept of emotion.
So basically, when you tell the narrative, you start with like, I made a mistake, everyone made mistakes, I was smug. And then there's a lot that comes after that. How would you feel about just ending it after that first paragraph?
I hate that.
Okay.
I have like an immediate emotionally angry response against that.
Very good.
Because it feels like idiocracy.
Okay.
It feels like, that's too long, didn't read, I don't need all those words when few words do gooder. I hate that shit. Like, I super hate that kind of communication of like, there's a lot of people that say like, oh, you should just say, my bad, guys. No, that does not in any way explain a situation. That doesn't tell you any information that is real. It is hand-waving for the masses in a way that is disingenuous to what happened and disingenuous to the people that are involved. I feel like to do that would be just me lying for the sake of lying so that people would fuck off.
This is the part of the conversation that really got to people. In my opinion, it's a beautiful example of all the reasons that Thor has so much trouble coming back from this controversy. To him, again, things are black and white. It's context or no context. It's right or wrong. It's an objectively perfect tweet, or it's absolute idiocracy. Notice the word choice there and the way he delivers that sentence. Idiocracy, said with frustration and anger. He's upset at the very idea of doing something he views as stupid. It's also super pretentious, but again, that's just my opinion. Also notice how Thor responds to the idea of saying, "My bad, guys." He puts on a silly, dumb voice when he does an impression of the commenter who suggested that. He then goes on to say that it doesn't explain a situation, and he's right. Because the people who are mad at him aren't looking to have something that they already watched explained to them. They're looking for remorse. They're begging you for it at this point, and yet still he cannot see that. Thor is also saying that giving everybody the classic "my bad guys" would be disingenuous, and him lying for the sake of getting out of a situation. This tells me that, unsurprisingly, Thor is not sorry. He's framing this as though apologizing would actually be the morally inferior thing to do, since it would be him lying. Because clearly he does not think it's his bad. He does not see that he has done anything at all that warrants an apology instead of an explanation. And not only that, he's upset at the very idea that this could all be boiled down to his fault. Again, take note of the intense language. This only creates a rift between him and his audience, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this is how he talks to himself. He mentioned earlier that he beats himself up. I would not be shocked if he uses the same lingo. "I really hate that. I wish they would fuck off," when talking to himself. It would explain why he's so eager to use that rhetoric in all of his other streams and videos, especially when he's upset.
It feels like they're asking for something that they know is not real, and I'd be giving them something that we both know is not real for the sake of giving something that's not real so that they stop being mad about something that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, so I think I think the key thing there is I was trying to figure out what won me over when you said that. And I'd be super curious if, like, how chat reacts to that as well. I'm not looking. I don't think you should, but because I think that that's what people are missing from you is like when you, and this is what I think makes you great, is when you actually, your best content is not when you're logical. Your best content is when you're emotional. And the logic supports it. Like there's logic there, but you're like, look, I'm not willing to do that. Could I do that? Absolutely. I just don't think that's right.
Yeah.
This is exactly what I was touching on earlier when I mentioned how Thor was particularly polarizing in his content and delivery. People loved the confidence. They loved the black and white thinking, the intense language, the Dr. House abrupt attitude of it all. Until, of course, he did something wrong.
What I'm trying to get across is this seems like the most realistic scenario. This is what I saw from my side. It's not me trying to cast blame away from myself. It's going, no, we all fucked up. That's the reality of the situation. We all fucked up. And I think what people want is they want me to go, no, it's my bad. But my bad is a lie.
So
And
sure.
I don't want to do that because it feels like I'm being asked to give bullshit for the sake of giving bullshit so that other people can be like, oh, I love this bullshit. We're cool now because we both realize that we've both bullshitted each other in this situation. It's not real.
Notice Thor saying, "This seems like the most realistic scenario. This is what I see from my point of view." Again, there is that assertion that his point of view seems like the most realistic scenario. I'm also going to interject here because nobody's asking for bullshit. They're asking for an apology from a man who is 38 years old and was mean to people in his WoW party. The only reason that would be considered bullshit would be if Thor didn't think he did anything wrong and viewed the idea that he did anything wrong as easily dismissible bullshit.
Or if someone clips this out of context,
It's already done.
please add someone post underneath with a reply this portion, okay? So you say you do your best to look at it objectively and you conclude this is bullshit. And I'm not saying you're wrong, okay? So I want
look at
you,
it objectively based on my subjective experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's
To the
assume for
best
a
of my
moment,
ability. Yeah.
let's assume for a moment that you are a narcissist.
Okay. That's
Okay.
going to get clipped.
I know. I know. But it's like, I think this is really where the money is. And this is not just about you. This is about everybody, myself included. I run this exercise with myself all the time. If a narcissist goes through the process that you go through, they will end up in the same place that you end up.
Which is likely why people make the accusation.
I didn't know they did that, but yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So like, that's the problem that you're dealing with.
I've decided to include this clip because I think it's a brilliant exercise that I had no idea about and will be using in the future. Again, not saying Thor is a narcissist.
The way that I put that up, the way that I put out messaging like that, especially public messaging, the internet will find any chink in the armor to try to unravel it into saying that you're a liar in some way.
Yep.
We've both seen this. So what I try to do is I go, okay, so instead of putting the ego first on this and being like, I did the best thing or I did the worst thing or being an emotional platitudes for this kind of shit or virtue signal for it, I just go, here's everything that happened from my perspective, and that's my story.
Okay, you ready for the mindfuck?
Sure.
You said that what you put out, people will try to find the chink in the armor, right?
They're going to do it anyway, but yeah.
No, they're not going to do it anyway. The way that you put things out makes them want to find the chink in your armor.
It doesn't make sense.
Dr. K is absolutely correct here. There have been successful, straightforward apologies online that have worked. The problem with Thor's tactic of taking accountability is that it's explaining a scenario without expressing remorse. All the audience gets is one line that says, "We all made mistakes, myself included." That is where people become frustrated. That is what Thor is not comprehending here. And might I just say, we are 2 hours and 26 minutes in and starting to talk in circles. And notice the dismissiveness of Thor saying they're going to do it anyway, but yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
I know.
That sounds, to me, sounds obsessive.
Obsessive. Another intense, hard word that frames the internet masses as freaks who just want to fight, just want to bring you down, etc. With one simple, exaggerated word, we get a whole new narrative from Thor, dismissing the people who read his apology and found something wrong with it as obsessive.
That's why I do the stuff that I'm doing.
Yeah, I think it's great.
I generally run game jams and all that shit.
Yeah.
It's because this shit is a waste of fucking time.
Yep.
It is the same reason that I have a short out that's like, stop looking at shorts. Go the fuck outside. And I know that sounds like self-inflationary of like aggrandizing for that shit, but like, dude, the internet's a fucking mistake for
so here now we get to it. You said, I know it sounds that way. It doesn't sound that way. If I read your words, huh?
When I say it that way, it sounds that way to me.
But it doesn't sound that way to me.
That's ridiculous to me.
Yes, I know it's ridiculous. So yeah, I know it's hard. So here's the point. The words, if I were to write them down and we said, hey, is this person arrogant? Maybe it would be the answer that you get. The emotional energy that you add to that doesn't make it come across as arrogant at all. It makes it come across, for me, I get inspired by that. I believe that. That sounds believable to me. So there's some
the perception disconnect is when I talk about a situation while removing the emotion from it, when to me that sounds like the most logical way to communicate. And the most objective way to communicate, which seems like it would be the best way for people to understand the scenario fully. And that's the most disconnected for other people because it makes them feel like I'm being evasive.
I think that is one step in the right direction for you.
So Dr. K is talking about how when Thor puts in emotional energy, his content becomes inspiring and interesting for many. Personally, I do think that comes across as arrogant, but I'm not his target audience. Clearly, thousands upon thousands of people viewed that kind of content as fascinating, fun, direct, no bullshit, etc. If Thor could have just said what he did wrong with that same energy, I do believe this situation could have been avoided. If he had said in his fun, deep voice, "Yeah, that was fucking stupid of me. I just wanted to save my character. I'm sorry," people would have accepted that. I think, mostly. But to Thor, ignoring that his party all fucked up instead of just himself is disingenuous and lying to his audience. I don't blame him for not wanting to put out an apology he doesn't believe. I respect that, actually. That said, I don't respect that Thor is refusing to reflect on why people are mad, why they want an apology, and when it's explained to him in plain terms, even by Dr. K, he dismisses it. I would hope that someone telling you that you upset them or were mean to them in a scenario would make you stop and think and lead to some remorse. Thor is not experiencing remorse. That is what's frustrating.
As your corpus callosum you know, you're just fried. You're just blackened at this point. You've got no emotional energy left, and the more you communicate, the angrier people will get. I really hope people leave you the fuck alone, because I think it's like enough is enough. I don't think you should. Don't compromise that. But I think there's like something in the middle of letting more of your authentic emotion out, and also be super careful about the way that you, even in your own head, sterilize your interactions and sterilize your contributions. I think you do.
Comfortable. It's comfortable.
Yeah,
That's why.
It's comfortable. But I think
And
you do that.
When the scenario is like super vitriolic, it's comfortable to sterilize
Yep.
that. It's comfortable to have like more of a logical conversation about it, because it's easier to process.
Yep.
It is less easy to, like, if I'm going to have a big emotional response, I feel like I'm being manipulative to another person, because I could do that. I could just sit down and be like, I'm going to have a big emotional response now, but that's not that's not how I am. That's not the person I am.
Thor, I do believe, is being honest here. I appreciate that he admits to trying to remove emotion from his speech and this entire scenario, because in a way that does protect him. It protects him from feeling bad about everything. The things he's done, the things unhinged commenters have said about him, etc. I also think that Thor experiences a lot of shame around his emotions. He's afraid of using them to hurt others, as he says, while ironically it was the sterilizing of an emotional response, the refusal to feel bad about something he's done wrong, that has been hurtful to his WoW party, his audience, and others.
Because, like, for me, I feel pretty happy with the way that I communicate generally. I don't generally have a problem with that. And I like being able to communicate objectively, either with, you know, in my relationships, friends, you know, people in the community. That feels fine to me. And I think there's a lot of people that actually like that about the way that I communicate. It's like, hey, you know, Thor's talking about all the things of all the, because we'll get a whole bunch of stories in that come in from the damn internet that are like, the fucking sky's on fire. And then you look at it and you're like, the sky's not on fire. This outhouse over here was on fire. It's not that big a deal. Right. And I find that there's very few islands of that shit online, man. Like, there's very few islands of people that be like, wait a minute, let's look into that before we start freaking out. Would it be easier for me to just, like, dive into the emotion first? Yeah. Would it be honest? No.
Thor assumes he is objective here. We know this is not always the truth. I understand what he's going for, though. The internet is a fear-mongering, hate-inspiring machine. Headlines and video titles are designed to get you to click. Nuance hops on a bus and crosses county lines. Having someone calmly explain to you a situation is, as Thor mentions, kind of an island on the internet. However, for Thor to effectively communicate about this specific situation he's in, he would have to acknowledge that he is not being objective and that he has not been objective. And I simply don't think that we're going to get that at this point.
Would it be quick views? 100%.
Yeah.
None of that shit makes sense to me.
I'm with
and
you,
like
man.
that's why I've always communicated that way. And it's not even a thing of like I'm not willing to change. I'd be lying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd just be straight up lying about all of these scenarios if that was the case. If it wasn't like, here's all the things as I see it, here's all the facts as I felt them, right? As the things that I went through, I'd be a piece of shit. I'd be just like a grifter on the internet that's just trying to garner as many views as possible. And that's fucking atrocious. Like, I hate that. I really hate that.
Here's all the facts as I felt them. That's an interesting statement. Thor's feelings he is equating with fact. To Thor, if he acknowledged anybody else's perspective and apologized, he would be a piece of shit, a view-hungry grifter. In his words, he hates that, and it's fucking atrocious, and he really hates that. I get not wanting to apologize for something that you aren't sorry for. But maybe he should look into what other people are saying that made them want an apology from him in the first place. If he isn't seeing what he should be sorry for, he needs to look harder. It's all out there. Now at this point, their conversation has largely come to an end, and they started talking about sunning your asshole.
And the most hilarious example of this is something called, what's it called? Not anal bleaching. Sunning the butt or something.
So that's the end of that, I guess. Ironically, during this end portion of the video, where Dr. K and Thor are chatting about crazy grifts on the internet, Thor becomes incredibly likable again.
Dude, what?
I gotta remember this. So there was this trend on TikTok.
Wait, is that the one where they show their butts to the to the sun?
Yeah. So people would do that, right? Because they're like, oh, this
so they
part
can absorb the sun through their ass and then gain medical shit for it. I've heard about this.
So the really the really scary thing is that they'll say like, oh, like the butt doesn't get sunlight, right? And then what people don't understand is that since the butt doesn't get sunlight, it is not designed to receive sunlight, which means that you will get a sunburn.
You get a sunburn your
yeah. People were getting there was like a medical concern. It was like a public health issue. Like dermatologists were dealing with a bunch of sunburned butts.
He's funny. He's engaged. He's echoing popular opinion about grifters online. It's not hard to see how this man got such a significant audience on the internet. So it's actually a huge shame that he's struggling with the ability to listen to people who are upset with him, to understand that he seems pretty arrogant, and so on. I don't think Thor has done anything terrible. At least, not to my knowledge. Maybe I don't know enough about him or the situation. But I do completely understand why so many people are so upset with him. I guess this whole thing is a lesson to content creators. If you're gonna double down, think twice about it. Protecting your ego during one statement will probably not be worth the 100-day blowback. Thank you for watching. Don't get an asshole sunburn, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.